The problem is that the problems on the passenger side somehow reflect the problems that are from the operational side.
We also see a reluctance to collaborate sometimes, or a fear to lose direct contact with customers, and data sharing being seen as a competitive disadvantage.
And what works for one country might not seamlessly integrate with the system of a neighboring country.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the European Railcast, a podcast about the future of European mobility, brought to you by EU Rail, the European Partnership for Rail Research and Innovation under the EU's Horizon Europe programme. I'm Jacki Davis and I'm the host of this podcast series. We have heard many examples in previous episodes of how the rail sector is constantly innovating to ensure that rail can play its full part in helping to meet the multiple challenges facing Europe. But we've also heard that many of these innovations are invisible. They involve changes that are taking place behind the scenes, so the travelling public is unaware of the extent to which the sector is being transformed. Meanwhile, more and more people are looking to rail to provide a more sustainable and a more convenient way to travel across Europe. But let's be frank, it isn't always easy for passengers to move from one country to another, or to use a combination of different types of transport to get to their final destination. So in this episode, we want to delve deeper into the key challenges facing those travellers who are looking for a sustainable and seamless travel experience, and discuss how the rail sector is investing in developing and deploying the solutions that are needed to address all of these issues and improve cross-border integration to create a truly sustainable and seamless mobility network. Hence the title of our podcast today, The Passenger Experience, Making Rail More Accessible, affordable and reliable. And joining me to discuss this, and I'm delighted to have them with me, Delphine, who is Senior Researcher at the European Passenger Federation, which is an association of passenger organisations and organisations promoting sustainable mobility. We have Micol Bisotto, who is Head of the Grant Office at Deep Blue, a research hub involved in many EU-funded research projects in transport as well as other sectors, and she is also coordinator of the EU Rail SESAR 3 joint undertaking TravelWise project. We'll hear more about that later. And Marlene Bamberg, head of team funding at HaCon, a company that is pioneering digital mobility. And she is project manager for the project FP1 Motional. Again, we'll hear more about that soon. But let us start, and Delphine, perhaps if I could start with you as the voice of the passenger on this podcast. I talked there about the challenges that passengers face when they want to travel, particularly when they want to travel cross borders and use multiple combinations of transport. A word the transport sector likes, the jargon word multimodal. So I fear we'll hear that quite a lot today. But when we talk about multimodality, difficulties in planning and booking journeys, buying tickets, delays resulting in misconnections, why is it, in a nutshell, that these are such difficult challenges to address? Why are we still struggling with this issue as more and more people look to rail to provide the solutions?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Jacki. Also, thank you for letting me start and giving me the floor. I think it's a good way to start by giving the passengers' perspective indeed on the existing challenges faced when traveling indeed with multiple operators and multiple modes, especially for long distance and cross-border journeys. There are many barriers, and I think we are all travelers, so we can all confirm that it is not an ideal situation yet. Indeed, passengers face many challenges, going from finding the right information, not available in one place. So you have to go to different websites or platforms to find out what combinations exist, basically, what options are, what the prices are of different options, which connections are feasible, for example. So all that is quite difficult to find out. So that's already a first barrier, because if you're not aware of the options, you cannot or it's very difficult to choose them. And then the next barrier is indeed ticketing. So a one-stop shop does not exist to a sufficient extent, let's say. While we see in regional, local public transport, we see a lot of improvement the last years with unified tickets like the Deutschland ticket, for example, or account-based ticketing. It has become a lot easier. But on the other hand, for long-distance travel, the dropout rate for rail bookings is a lot higher than for planes. So that says something about the difficulties faced. And then indeed, disruption management is another key barrier, because if you miss a connection due to a disruption on one leg of the trip, and that causes subsequent difficulties for continuing your journey, that causes a lot of stress and uncertainty, and possibly also a lot of additional cost. So these three things are really crucial. And I think there are two main sets of causes, let's say. So one aspect or one set of factors has to do with technological barriers. Indeed, as often mentioned by the sector, we need standardization, we need interoperability, and especially in rail, we have many national systems that deploy their own systems, and it's not always compatible. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, we also see a reluctance to collaborate sometimes, or a fear to lose direct contact with customers, and data sharing being seen as a competitive disadvantage. So concerns like that we see as well, and we think that's another major barrier for developing a more integrated information ticketing and disruption management system.
So that is the scale of the challenge. You talked about difficulties collaborating, but we're going to hear today about precisely great collaborations, projects where many, many partners are working together on solutions. But Micol, Bisotto, if I could come to you first in terms of why these challenges are so difficult to address. Why are they persisting in an era when we've seen a lot greater demand from passengers for rail travel? They want to travel by rail. They want to combine it with other mode of transport. Why is this so difficult?
The problem is that the problems on the passenger side somehow reflect the problems that are from the operational side. So at the moment, even though there are some collaboration between rail transport operators and air transport operators, for example, in Germany, but not only in Europe, there are collaborators. So there are commercial offers that offer a single ticket that unites the air leg with the rail leg. There's no active collaboration on the operational side. So what happens is that you buy a single ticket, and when there is actually a disruption, there's no real common situational awareness from the operational side between the two transport modes that are involved in this ticket that they have sold. So in the project that I coordinate, that it's called TravelWise, and that is the first project that is co-funded by two joint undertakings. So the SESAR joint undertaking, that is the joint undertaking on the ATM research, and it's research in air traffic management, and the Europe's Rail joint undertaking. What we're trying to do is really this, like try to have operators discuss.
We will come back to the work you're doing and perhaps some examples of how you're trying to do that in a moment. But Marlene, complete the picture for us in terms of the challenge that you face and why this is quite a difficult problem and why it takes so much collaboration between so many partners to address it.
In a nutshell, I would say that the rail networks and also the other transport operators, they developed within their national borders. So they developed a system that works within their country. So they have their own technical standards, their own operational rules, and their own infrastructure. And what works for one country might not seamlessly integrate with the system of a neighboring country. So this is basically what we see if we consider cross-border, because here multiple operators have to talk to each other. We have to share our data, that was already mentioned, and we find an agreement how to handle this. And now it gets even more complicated if you really consider multimodality. So you don't only have trains, you have buses and trams and metros, you might even have demand responsive transport. And if you throw all these into the mix, the complexity really multiplies.
So tell me a little bit, Marlene, first about the Motional, the project that you are working on, and some examples of the sorts of solutions that you are developing to address those challenges you just outlined.
Yes, absolutely. So one goal of Motional is to make travel across borders easy. So let's think about Sarah. Sarah lives in Brussels and she wants to visit a friend in Luxembourg. She was never in Luxembourg before, so she has no idea how to get there. Wouldn't it be great if she just opens an app, she types in her home address and the address where she wants to go, and now she sees the way right there. Different options how to get there across borders with different modes of transport. She sees how long it takes, when the next connection is possible, she sees the prices of it, and then she can even book this ticket. So let's say in the end she does that, and the trip consists of taking a metro within Brussels to the main station, now the long distance train going to Luxembourg, and then a bus at the end. That would be a potential trip where all these challenges that we already mentioned are solved. But we do not want to stop there in our project. We want to go further and support her even while traveling. So, for example, if the long distance train is delayed, she will get a notification, but it won't just say, sorry, your train is delayed, you will miss your connection. It will already provide the solution as well to tell her, hey, you need to take this other bus or this other connection. And this is what we are ultimately working on.
The first half of that, Marlene, already exists in some cities. You can find out how to get from one point in a city to another. The second half sounds quite revolutionary in terms of, and this is what you do about it. Come back on that in a moment, if we might. But Micol, same question to you. Tell us a little bit about the focus of the work at TravelWise and some examples of what you're working on to address these issues.
So as I said, we are more focused on the operator side, but obviously focusing on the operator side and making that part more, in that part, the coordination smoother, then will benefit the passengers, because if operators can address disruptions in a quick and effective way, obviously then also the passenger experience will increase. It fits what we do, it fits very well with the Motional project. We are one of the other flagship projects, so we already have a coordination also with the Motional project. What we do, our main goal, so our solution is focused on building multimodal common situational awareness across transport modes. We have the project involves rail, air, and also maritime. So we have the port of Piraeus that is involved as well. And we take into account the multimodal journey and which are the steps of the multimodal journeys that are relevant for the transport modes that are involved and which information they need to share among transport modes. So for each of these then milestone, we identify what is the information that is needed from one leg of the journey to the other to be shared between operational guys, so that if a disruption occurs, they can manage to effectively try to mitigate.
So what you're doing feeds into what Marlene is doing. You're providing the means by which they can identify what they need to share, and then she's working on making sure that that can get to the passenger. Let me ask the passenger's representative here, listening to that, how much difference all of this really could make, Delphine. How do you see this? I mean, going back to the title of our podcast today, do you really believe these sorts of things can make the passenger experience more accessible, affordable, and reliable?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, absolutely. Because as I said, we have the problem of having integrated information, integrated ticketing, but also disruption management is really key. And it's a major inhibiting factor for people to choose multimodality, because they fear the possibility of getting stranded somewhere. and not being able to continue their journey or not knowing what to do, not receiving any assistance. We do have, of course, some regulation on that, but that's really mode specific. We have an upcoming proposal on multimodal journeys, but it's not yet finalized. We also have some voluntary agreements within the sector, notably in rail, an agreement on journey continuation, whereby rail operators allow passengers that miss the connection to hop on the next available train. So these things are, of course, these initiatives are welcome, but we see that in practice they are not sufficiently implemented yet. So we really need more. We need further improvement, and information is a first key step. If you're faced with a disruption, knowing what the impact is on the trip and what alternatives there are. And I would suggest that it would be combined with really also better protection, in the sense that there would be a continuation guarantee, and that this would come at no additional cost to passengers, and they would also be notified of their rights and possibly their right to submit a complaint and to submit a reimbursement or compensation request.
So issues to be ironed out, challenges to be met, but you believe this could make a real difference for passengers. Can I ask, Micol, how close are we to realising the goals of your projects? And in terms of the benefits that we can deliver to passengers, are you already able to deliver some of those benefits? Or do you need to complete the work before they can begin to feel the difference?
Yes, I would say that we're still a little bit far from the project, the real project results that will benefit the passengers. The project started 1 year ago, so we still have 2 years to go. We spent, just to make you understand what is the situation, we spent almost 1 year to define which is the meaning of some terms, because putting together people from operators from different transport domains, then it comes out that we use different terminology. So there are acronyms that in one transport mode mean something and in another one mean something completely different. So it seems absurd, but it took us a long time only to agree on a common glossary of terms, to agree on definitions of what is a disruption, what is a delay, what is... So now that we have these common ground, we're building the solution. So it will take a couple of years more, but we are on
the right track now. Forgive the pun. So we have multilinguality issues, if I can say, as well as multimodality issues. You need to agree the baseline, make sure you're all talking about the same thing. Marlene, from your perspective, how close are we to realising that vision that you set out for us, of the traveller who can look and they miss the connection, they can find out what happens next? Are we getting there?
Yes, so we are getting there, and our project is a bit further along, I would say. So we are finalizing and planning to have demonstrations on a lot of these topics in the beginning of next year. So actually stay tuned on updates from Motional. So there will be demonstrations in various European cities that will show this cross country connection, and we will have these demonstrations running for several weeks, and then collect the user feedback, which is really important to also get that information and then build it into our solution. Because on the one hand, we have, of course, all the technical details, but in the end, it is for the passengers, it's for the users. It needs to be helpful and as easy as possible, and therefore we're on a good track.
And thank you, because I wanted to, as a last question to you all, ask where we need to go from here. So we're on a good track, very exciting possibilities, things passengers can really look forward to make travelling by rail, and rail becoming a really seamless and sustainable option for them. What do we need to do now to build on that? What are you focusing on, Marlene? I think you were talking there about the user feedback. It's the usability of what you're developing that would be absolutely crucial as the next step, if I understand you rightly. And what sort of help, support do you need to make sure that you can get there as we go forward? So we mentioned earlier, Delphine mentioned the implementation phase of all of this and the take-up of them. How do you see that happening?
So this is a really important, quite the key point, because we are running currently demonstrations from specific cities with specific operators, and it's very much set up because it's not trivial to just implement a variety of operators. So what is really important is that we need to find a rollout for this to make this scalable. And this is something where we are struggling mostly with standards, but also with topics like what is the framework for collaboration? How do we get all these people, companies, operators on board to collaborate? So here I think general rules, guidelines can help us to make this happen, because every operator needs to do their part, but no one can do it alone. So this is why this is a general effort that needs to be done together. And there, from a really daily operation, there's some time to go until that.
Thank you very much. Micol, you mentioned you're at that base phase, as you say. You've agreed. You're all talking the same language now. You know what the challenge is you're trying to address, and you're now building on that work. Where do we go from here? And for you, Delphine, Marlene highlighting there the issue of standardizations, frameworks for collaboration. Is there anything else you would highlight, support that you will need to take this work forward?
So first, I agree, totally agree that the issue of standardization and interoperability, it's really one of the major problems that we will have to tackle. What I think that since TravelWise was this first case of a jointly funded project, I think if at European level there is a sort of they continue going on this path of really acting as an example of collaboration between joint undertakings. So funding something that is already a collaboration itself probably could help somehow try to overcome some of the problems, because still in the rail sector there is very high fragmentation, and this, as I think Marlene was saying this in the beginning, this is a big issue.
And this is an issue we've discussed in previous episodes of the podcast, and some of the other work that is going on in this area to reduce that fragmentation, and crucially to drive the take-up of these solutions that you're developing through your projects. Because Delphine, you mentioned, it's not sufficiently implemented at the moment. What for you? You talked about information. And I'm wondering about the role of passengers here, and linking this to what was said about user feedback and how passengers can help in this endeavour of translating all these great innovations into real life situations. Where do you think we need to focus as we go on from here?
Well, I think, and that's a core aspect of EPF's vision and the reason of existence, that we should always start from the question, what's in it for the passengers? What do we want to achieve? We want to make life easier for passengers and making rail and multimodality easier to use and more attractive, more reliable, more affordable, etc. And this is why it's really important to involve end users also in research and innovation. And from the outset, and just from the start, from the moment where we develop really the concept until we develop mock-ups and test phases, but also until actual implementation. As said by Marlene, there will be demonstrations where user feedback is gathered, so that's really important. As EPF, we've also had the opportunity in the last years to provide feedback to EU Rail and to specific projects, bringing in this passenger perspective. So that's really key to make sure that what we are doing really delivers on what people need. So we need to involve them. We need to listen to different groups, because not all people, not all passengers are the same, especially people with reduced mobility, with disabilities, but also others. Also, people lacking digital skills should not be forgotten, for example. People living outside of cities, because their transport needs are also different, and it's important to also look at that. So that's one aspect, to focus really on the users, on a demand-based approach rather than a technology push. And another aspect is to make sure that what we are developing is indeed actually used as much as possible, so that we support wide deployment really beyond the project's end also. So that's really also very important to focus on what happens after project's end, exploitation, route to market, trying to achieve a high TRL level so that what we have is really ready to be used by others that are interested to build on this. And one final point, very final, but also to appreciate my colleagues here in this panel. I think building synergies and also forming continuity between different research and innovation initiatives and joint undertakings even is also really important to, optimize how we use our limited resources and to avoid duplication of work and to achieve maximum impact.
Thank you. So the word collaboration, which has resonated throughout this conversation, the projects we were hearing about are all about collaboration between different companies, different organizations, and crucially, as Delphine was saying there, involving the passenger at every step of the way. Thank you to all of you for a great discussion and for sharing your insights. And it's exciting to hear what might be possible in the very near future. So thank you for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by EU Rail, the European Partnership for Rail Research and Innovation under the Horizon Europe programme. And EU Rail aims to deliver a high-capacity integrated European rail network by eliminating barriers to interoperability, by providing solutions for full integration and achieving faster uptake and deployment of innovation through funded projects. That's all from me. It's been great having you with us today, and thanks to all of the team who are involved in the European Railcast, a podcast about the future of European mobility. And please do stay tuned for future episodes. Thank you and goodbye.